Hello, dear viewers. Today we will tell you about Vyacheslav Kirillovich Ivankov, known by the nickname Yaponchik. Vyacheslav Kirillovich Ivankov was born on January 2, 1940. As a child, Ivankov was in poor health. While still in school, he decided to improve his health and took up sports, specifically boxing and martial arts. At 14, Vyacheslav began committing thefts. After 8th grade, Ivankov enrolled in circus school, specializing in aerial gymnastics. He quickly achieved results, but during training, he fell from a trapeze, sustaining a closed, traumatic brain injury. He did not seek medical help, although he experienced serious health problems. Ivankov stopped training and eventually left the school. He got a job at a consumer services factory as a mechanic and later became a receiving clerk. At age 20, he studied at an evening school and married Lydia Ivazova. Soon, they had a son. Among friends, Ivankov was jokingly called the Assyrian. In 1965, Ivankov was detained by police for attempting pickpocketing. He resisted the police officers during detention. He was sent to the Koshchenko Hospital for inpatient forensic psychiatric examination. The diagnosis showed that he suffered from a chronic mental illness, a form of schizophrenia, and required compulsory treatment. Ivankov remained in the hospital from April 5 to July 18, 1966. Upon learning of his diagnosis, he radically changed his behavior. He actively communicated with others, participated in board games, read books, warmly greeted his wife during visits, and showed affection for his son. On July 17, 1966, after learning of the court's decision to send him for compulsory treatment, he escaped from the hospital. Ivankov passed external exams for 9th and 10th grades of high school, but did not live at home, hiding from the police. This continued until November 1966, when he was detained again and returned to the hospital. In March 1967, an expert commission that included Professor Luntz concluded that Ivankov had completely recovered from his psychotic state. Gennady Kharkov, known by the nickname Mongol, was an influential figure in the criminal world. He died in 1994. In the late 1960s, he formed a large group of 32 people. 7 members were women who posed as police officers. Members of Mongol's group extorted money from antique dealers, speculators, and drug dealers. It was Mongol who noticed the abilities of young Vyacheslav Ivankov. In January 1972, an organized criminal group was exposed in Moscow, led by Gennady Alexandrovich Kharkov, born in 1930, known as Mongol. The most active members were Vyacheslav Kirillovich Ivankov, born in 1940, a native of Moscow, nicknamed Yaponchik, and Vladimir Vasilyevich Bykov, born in 1937, nicknamed Balda. The latter was sentenced to 13 years in prison. Yaponchik managed to avoid punishment. Soon, Ivankov formed his own group. Its members, posing as police officers, conducted searches of people living off illegal income, which ended in complete confiscation of property. Some victims were taken to the forest, where they were subjected to brutal torture to obtain valuables and money. Balda was soon released early. Other criminal elements joined Ivankov's group, and it began operating throughout the Soviet Union, in Riga, Kazan, and Sverdlovsk. Ivankov was under observation at a psycho-neurological dispensary. He worked as a photo lab technician and coach at a children's sports school. In 1974, he received permanent second-group disability status due to mental illness. Despite this, Ivankov led an active lifestyle and frequently visited restaurants. He had a wide circle of acquaintances. In March 1974, during a fight with representatives of a Caucasian group at the Rus restaurant in Moscow, one person was killed. Ivankov was detained. During a search, forged documents were found and seized from him, a passport and driver's license. From June 5th to August 13th, 1974, Ivankov underwent inpatient forensic psychiatric examination at the Serbsky Institute. The commission concluded that he did not suffer from mental illness and could be held criminally responsible. On November 18, 1974, Ivankov was convicted under Article 196, Part 3 of the RSFSR Criminal Code and sentenced to 7 months and 15 days in prison for using forged documents. He was released from custody in the courtroom due to time served. He was not prosecuted for participating in the fight. Using corrupt connections, Ivankov managed to avoid more serious punishment. During the investigation and trial, Ivankov was held in Butyrka prison, where he received the status of thief-in-law from representatives of the criminal world held there. After prison, Ivankov divorced his wife. For some time, he was listed as a merchandise specialist at a vegetable store, but in fact, he didn't work anywhere. He entered the circle of the most influential leaders of Moscow's criminal world. He spent evenings at restaurants. In particular, twice a week, he visited the exclusive Saturn restaurant in the company of Mongol. Vyacheslav Kirillovich often acted as an arbiter in criminal disputes. In the early 1980s, Ivankov gathered a criminal group around himself. Group members, using police IDs and firearms, conducted searches of shadow economy dealers living off criminal income, stealing valuables and money from them. In some cases, they committed apartment burglaries. In addition, having a wide circle of informants among wealthy intellectuals and officials, group members identified those who possessed large sums of money and valuables. They would then fraudulently transport them outside Moscow in cars or deliver them to safe locations, where, through physical violence and torture, they forced victims to surrender money and valuables. In 1991, many cultural and sports figures, including Iosif Kobzon, Alexander Rosenbaum, and ophthalmologist Sviatoslav Fyodorov, petitioned for Yaponchik's release. In March 1992, Ivankov traveled first to Germany and then to the United States, posing as an employee of director Roland Bykov's film studio. With the help of a Russian-American joint venture created specifically for his migration, and a fraudulent marriage to U.S. citizen Irina Vlad, Ivankov settled in New York. There he became a mediator in disputes between both criminal authorities and Russian businessmen. According to some reports, Ivankov was involved in drug trafficking and organized a group for racketeering consisting of 250 former athletes and military personnel. Some sources also reported that Ivankov secretly visited Moscow. The Western press reported that during this time, Ivankov was effectively the head of Russian organized crime in New York. Ivankov owned restaurants in Miami and Denver. In the fall of 1994, the FBI contacted two Russian-speaking businessmen, Volkov and Voloshin, co-owners of Summit Company, who claimed that Ivankov and his associates were extorting large sums of money from them through threats. All of Ivankov's phone conversations were carefully recorded, and his movements were monitored around the clock by 18 FBI agents working in 3 shifts. This allowed sufficient evidence to be gathered. On July 8, 1995, the FBI arrested Ivankov on extortion charges. In January 1997, Ivankov was found guilty and sentenced to 9 years and 7 months in prison for extortion and fraudulent marriage to a U.S. citizen. He served his sentence at Lewisburg Prison. In 1999, heroin was discovered in his cell, for which he was transferred to a wing for particularly dangerous criminals. In April 2000, Vyacheslav Ivankov was charged in absentia in Russia with the murder of 2 Turkish businessmen and wounding a third in the Moscow region in February 1992. An extradition request was sent to the United States. In July 2004, Ivankov was released from American prison and immediately deported to Russia. The Russian prosecutor's office refused to drop the case due to the statute of limitations, citing that Ivankov had been hiding in the U.S. from Russian justice. The defendant himself stated that he intended to seek complete rehabilitation. In July 2005, a jury found Ivankov not guilty. In December of the same year, the acquittal was upheld by the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, and in April 2006, it was confirmed by the Presidium of the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation. Among the lawyers representing Ivankov's interests at all these hearings was Alexander Goffstein, who was later arrested in Madrid in November 2006 in connection with a Russian organized crime case. After acquittal, Ivankov stated that he would take up fishing and did not intend to participate in criminal conflicts. Nevertheless, living abroad in the second half of the 2000s, Ivankov acted as an arbiter in disputes between various criminal groups. In particular, Ivankov took part in the conflict between the criminal clans of Tariel Oniani and Aslan Usoyan, known as Dead Kasan, taking the latter's side. On July 28, 2009, an assassination attempt was made on Ivankov in Moscow. Unidentified individuals fired from sniper rifles with optical sights as he was leaving the Thai Elephant restaurant on Leningradskoye Highway. The fire came from a parked Gazelle van on the opposite side of the road. After being wounded, Ivankov's security guards pushed him back into the restaurant. Doctors assessed his condition as extremely serious. He underwent emergency surgery, after which he was placed in an induced coma. On the night of September 13th to 14th, Ivankov experienced clinical death. He died of peritonitis on October 9, 2009, at a private clinic of the Cancer Center on Kasherskoye Highway in Moscow. Doctors performed surgery, but could not save him. The farewell ceremony took place on the morning of October 13th at the Church of the Resurrection at Vagankovo Cemetery, where the burial took place. Engineering and sapper department personnel checked the entire cemetery for explosives. Ivankov's death caused a major stir. A large crowd of people gathered near the church, including journalists from major media outlets. At the request of relatives, media coverage of the funeral was limited. Private security company personnel obstructed the press's work. Nevertheless, news agencies RIA Novosti, Associated Press, and France Press released photographs of the funeral procession. Numerous wreaths were delivered to the church with inscriptions from the Kirov Brotherhood, from the Yaroslavl Brotherhood, and others. About 500 people attended the funeral, including well-known criminal authorities and members of criminal groups. The extensive coverage of the funeral drew condemnation from the State Duma. The media paid particular attention to the fact that the Russian flag was carried at the funeral. Ivankov was buried in Section 50 of Vagankovo Cemetery, next to actor Leonid Kharitonov. In the summer of 2011, a monument was erected on his grave. The story of Vyacheslav Ivankov is a reminder that a life built on crime inevitably leads to a tragic end. Write your opinion about this story in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you found this material interesting.